It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. All I ask is that you think.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates, and welcome to episode 5 of Just My 3 Cents, where we make it make sense and I interact with you, the listeners and the watchers, to basically raise the culture. And so, if it's your first time tuning in, our goal is to make this a live interactive podcast where you jump on, join me, try to put your comments and read your comments. But better yet, if you're not too afraid, jump on, ask me anything. Again, my name's Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. I consider myself a philosopher, and so we try to have discussions on race, sex, and culture. So anything that you're thinking about or may want to ask about, let's dialogue about it. I'm about to post the link for you people to join me. So hopefully you just seen the link posted. So if you want to join me tonight, you can. But I always, I kind of get us started off. But as soon as you want to join, you can jump in and let's have these good conversations on race, sex, and culture, areas that I think I've done a lot of study in and have kind of earned my way. But with that said, I wanted to share a couple of thoughts that I thought about this week. I was going to focus on one thought, and I saw something else that moved me to discuss as well. But the first thing I wanted to start out is, for those who don't know, you see the behind my head mental dialogue. All I ask is that you think. I've been doing a regular audio only podcast for 6 years now, and we've done all type of discussions where we've deep dive into these issues of race, sex, and culture. So this interactive 30 minutes is all it is, 30, 35 minutes. We just get it in and get it quick just to see if we can make sense of all these things that are happening out here. But I ended up being involved in a dialogue earlier this week where there was, in a sense, discussions about the enslavement period. And I just want to touch on this very briefly, and I want to go into something even more so, and I'll highlight that, which is the idea of, as the African-American culture, have we embraced negativity? That's the highlight of what I want to talk about. But briefly, let me jump over here to something again, just a dialogue I was involved with. Shout out to the Pseudo Killers. That's where I had the dialogue, and they were having a discussion about Africans, in a sense, that sold us into slavery. And they had this real deep dive, spent a lot of hours going real deep into it. And I remember we had done a show on mental dialogue about, in a sense, what we actually labeled it was reparations, and what about Africans selling us as African Americans into enslavement, right? And so just kind of like playing a little bit off the idea of, well, is there something old, even from maybe in a sense, our African brothers who may have sold us into enslavement, was kind of the viewpoint that we took, and we deep dove into the conversation on our show. And here's what I wanted to highlight from a psychological perspective, which is the concept of, did our African brothers and sisters sell us into enslavement, is, in my opinion, an incorrect way to look at it. I remember the first time I was exposed to that concept, I thought to myself, like, although I had never thought about it, I thought to myself, like, oh, that makes me personally, thinking about it from, me as an African American, that makes me feel bad thinking about that concept. Whereas obviously being raised in America, we're always, in a sense, focused on, in a sense, the European culture, in a sense, having done the enslavement during the transatlantic and Atlantic slave trade. And so with that said, I had never thought about it until, a lot of years later, and there would be these big discussions about, well, what about the Africans who had done it? And I used to take that on and was like, yeah, that's kind of messed up. But when we did the deep dive on the show, we'll make this point quick and then move into the negativity discussion. So when we had discussions on the show, I had a brother by the name of Robert Patillo. He's definitely someone much wiser on it than me. But when we talked about the history, the thing that he wanted me to understand was that we basically we treat Africa as if it's a country, and don't really understand that from a broader context, that it wasn't, in a sense, our black brothers selling us into, to the white man, into enslavement. It was two distinctive groups, tribes, if you will, that typically did not care for each other or had no ties to one another, that would get involved. And so what something that we lose sight of because of us being raised in our American system, especially as African Americans, we basically equate blacks as one group because we've been basically socially constructed to treat the race of blackness as a group. Well, there's really outside of the transatlantic slave trade, that's not how race, in a sense, was looked at before that time, and it is still literally a construct that we talk and discuss in today, but it's incorrect to do so when you don't consider that Africa is a continent inside of itself. So what I want to say real quickly, and I'll move on, is it becomes silly to say did Africans sell other Africans into enslavement, because it would be the same as saying, think about American history. If we put it in the same context of Africa being a continent, it would be like saying, did North Americans enslave other North Americans? While that is actually factual, the reason that sounds weird is because due to what happened during that time, the entire world speaks of Africa in the same manner, but we don't speak of other continents that way. We don't say what did South Americans do to other South Americans, because the reality is slavery has existed on all regions of regions of the world at various times, but you're never referred to as the Asians enslaved the Asians, because, like, for example, Russia's in Asia, but you don't think of Russians as in being in Asia, because the context that most groups are able to have that conversation is they are specific to the group that done it to them. The reason we as African Americans can't do it specifically and say, well, this is the tribe that actually enslaved my tribe or captured my tribe and sent me to the Americas, if you will, that's the bigger point. The bigger point is the fact that as African Americans, we are the only group in the world that unfortunately has been detached from our history in a way that we don't know who specifically we were. And that's the biggest issue with the transatlantic slave trade compared to other enslavements throughout history. And it's not to necessarily say which one was worse than the other, but that distinction makes it the reason why we put Africa in the context, even as African Americans and Africans themselves, having been colonized, will often speak of Africa in the larger context. But what I really would love for us to understand is that context was given to us when race became a social construct. And so I think it is much smarter to recognize is that once we recognize the social construct, then we can speak much smarter about it than to refer to it as simply as African sold us and think of it in a negative way about, in a sense, our African brothers and sisters across the diaspora. So that's my quick thought on that. Definitely wanted to jump into this post that actually is going to be the driver for today's show. If anybody has any thoughts on that, please click the link or make some comments. I'm looking for the comments, so click the link and jump on and give me your 3 cents. Because again, my goal is not for y'all to listen to me for 30 minutes every Wednesday night. So if you have some thoughts about what I just said, feel free to hit the link, jump on, don't be afraid, and join us for I want this to be a live interactive podcast. With that said, I'm going to transition. This is a post from my an amazing friend of mine. Hold on, I always do weird. I cue stuff up, and then when I go to look for it, it's not there. All right, hold on 1 second. I wanted to share this post for one of my good friends because he said a lot, and some of what he was saying was being intentional. I don't think people should necessarily hear it literally, but I'm going to read this. It's real short, so bear with me reading this to y'all very quickly. But it's basically the gist of what I wanted to have a conversation about tonight, and hopefully y'all would join me and give me y'all thoughts on it. And so this mentor of mine, he just posted this week, and he said, for the life of me, I can't figure out why most of, not all, Black culture is associated with mediocrity, meanness, ghetto, or lack of. There is a dark energy that is forced upon us for us by us. Like Black people can't get a golden retriever dog. They have to get a pit bulls, Rottweilers, or other tough dogs. Pet fish can't be goldfish or happy lost Nemos. They have to be piranhas, Oscars, or other mean ass fish. Our environments have to be based upon living in the hood. We can't be associated with nicer suburbs, birds, or better living conditions without our people's ridicule. The store owners in the communities don't give a shit about what and how they sell things to us, and we accept it. The streets are littered with trash, and you can watch the people do it over and over again. A black person can't just speak well. They're either talking white or considered a sellout. Our women can't be women. They have to be referred to as bitches or hoes. Can someone please tell me why so many of these negative images I'm sorry. Can someone please tell me why so many of these negative images have to be placed on our communities? Why do we accept this as our standard? That is a mouthful, an absolute mouthful. And so I wanted to dig into that. And the way I wanted to dig into it, for those who know, Just My 3 Cents is not only the name of this podcast, but it's also the name of my upcoming book. So I want to share this one thought out of my upcoming book. And then I'm also going to share a quick video of Nipsey Hussle talking about what you just heard. And then the brother put it about publicly, so I'll say his name. Again, a mentor of mine, Dwayne Drawn, an amazing brother. I've had him on the show several times. But he said a mouthful in there, and he's asking the question. So again, when you listen to it, he's saying, "Hey, I'm wondering why are we embracing this negativity?" I gave him a response, but I want to share a couple thoughts, one from my book and some thoughts from Nipsey Hussle, and really dig into this over the next 20 minutes. And again, I hope y'all join me. Hit the link and join me in this discussion. So, real quick, sorry to read so much, but again, I just want to really bring this home. And so, again, this is just a quick line from my upcoming book. All right. So this piece in particular out of my book is called Black Socrates Speaks Equal Accountability. And this is just the first line of that piece. It says, what do you expect from a group of people when you redline that group into a neighborhood in which you deindustrialize their neighborhood, which leads to poor schools, and then you over-police that same neighborhood other than it to disintegrate into survival mode? I'm going to read it one more time. What do you expect from a group of people when you redline that group into a neighborhood in which you deindustrialize their neighborhood, which leads to poor schools, then you over-police that same neighborhood other than to it to disintegrate into survival mode? And so now I want to play a quick cut from Nipsey talking about the concept of survival mode. If you want to join me, hit the link. So let me share my screen here.
There's no one answer to how you change the hood or change the reality of what goes on. But what you gotta think about is when you don't have resources, you in survival mode. So being in survival mode automatically rules out a lot of things because you don't care about morality, because you don't experience morality. You experience, the need to survive. You don't experience, fairness. You don't experience planning for the future. You just experience my ribs touching. You know what I mean? And it's better me than you. And, it's a survival instinct that kick in. So I think once you get out of the survival mode, your morals come back closer to your daily decision making. You start thinking about what's right and what do I believe in. But until you get out of survival mode, you ain't got time to be worrying about right and wrong. You worrying about bottom line. You know what I mean? By any means necessary. So I think that economics is the answer. Empowering people economically is how you really, really impact. But I don't know if it's about dropping a bag of money in the hood. I think it's about impacting culture in a way that, the mentality changes. And then also, the institutions that exist, it's just a prison institution, really. It's like a pipeline to jail. It ain't no constructive institutions for real that meet you ground level. It's just like if you fuck up, we got somewhere to put you. So it's like a fear-based preventative approach. Then like some love, and like we know y'all going through a struggle, and we know y'all could use an art center or a studio compound or entrepreneurial space it's like whatever going on, if you can't figure it out, we're gonna lock you up, bro. So whatever it is, yeah, it's on y'all. I think like you get people out of survival mode, they start thinking different. I did, you know, when I figured out, you know, how to get myself out of the situation, my approach to life and people was different. I wasn't so angry. I didn't have my guard up. I wasn't so aggressive. I wasn't so, you know, expecting if you ain't helping me, fuck you. That wasn't the mentality no more. And I can't blame nobody. You know what I mean? That's thinking about how they gonna pay their rent or like going through not having food at the house, being young and having to go outside to hustle to feed themselves and school clothes. That's gonna change people. That's gonna make you feel away. And you can't fault them. You just gotta kind of empathize with the scenario and understand you put a person in survival mode, they're gonna survive by any means. I couldn't make a blanket statement to just the young people doing dirt. I don't think that's honest. You know what I mean? It's context for everything. Nothing happens in a vacuum, you know? But I would say that, you know what I mean? You're gonna lay in the bed you make. You're not gonna get away with nothing in terms of the energy. You know what I mean? You might beat the camera or the police. They might not catch you for what you're doing, but the energy is always gonna return to you. So
very, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful comments. Got my brother Dwayne drawing on this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and join him on this. Hey, what's up, Dwayne? How you doing, King?
Doing good. I don't know how the audio's gonna be, man. Cause I'm on the card system, so if you can't hear me, that's because I'm in the car.
I can hear you just fine, brother.
Okay. I guess I got a decent car system.
Yep, that'll work. What you might need to do though, if you can hear me through the system, turn the volume down because I can hear you just fine.
Oh, I can hear everything. Are you getting some feedback?
Yeah, I'm getting the feedback, and I don't know how to quite tell you what to do. Just maybe we can figure it out.
Okay. How about now? Are you getting the feedback now?
Let me talk it. Let me see if I hear myself. It's much lower. Whatever you did is much lower, so we can make that work.
Okay, I just turned it down, so hopefully we can get it from there.
Yeah, we good. But brother, I actually just literally read your post to everyone that's watching right now, because I wanted to talk about exactly what you posted, the idea of why do we embrace negativity in our community. So for everybody, I'm so glad to have this brother on. As you can see, he's riding, so we're gonna make it work. But with that said, man, I'll just let you give me some more thoughts other than what you wrote. Like, what drove you to even write that, brother?
You know, I actually just parked so we can get a better signal. The problem is that I see is in our community we accept. I just don't understand why we accept mediocrity. And the thing what happened was I was actually at an event where we were displaying our new company, and it was in a landscape event, and obviously it was like 20,000 people there, and there was probably maybe 10 black people. And I'm looking at all these other companies, they have all these white people working for them, and I'm like, where are our people? Like, how come nobody's there? And then I'm starting to realize is that, yeah, we do have a vacuum of, we have racism, we have all those things, but it's like, that's not the problem anymore. We're doing it to ourselves in a certain way. Like, you know what I mean? We accept mediocrity. Like, if a brother's speaking well or doing good in business, we call him a white boy or he's a sellout. He's not doing his thing. If somebody moves to a nice neighborhood, oh, he lives in a white neighborhood. Oh, you guys live like that. You know what I mean? It's like this attack that we get on each other when one of them becomes successful. I mean, even when we look at celebrities and superstars as success, we call them devil worshippers. We said they sold themselves to the devil, and all they are is work their butts off and became successful. So there's some type of issue that we have in our community, and we're holding each other back. And it was just frustrating. So I sat down and typed it up. I actually have more to say, but I was like, let me just drop those words and leave it there and create a dialogue and go from
absolutely.
there.
And you know me, I'm glad to participate in that dialogue. And we're not going to do it a big justice on my 30-minute joint, but it was worth putting out there. And you know what I said to you, and I know you understood this, and it was that we have to discuss the why. Because I love that you're putting the dialogue on the table for us to explore these, because what I call these, I want you to hear this, I call what you're concerned about, you're focused on the results, because there's no denying or running from that. What you're discussing and seeing out there is a very real thing. But I want you to understand what you're seeing and frustrated with are the results. And the reason I use that word in particular, because the way you have to deal with it, you have to understand or begin to understand why are those the results. I'm going to share this quick line with you that I already shared with the audience, but I want to let you hear it so that you can give me your thoughts on this line. I shared it with the audience already, but because this was your post, I want you to listen closely to this line and dissect it from your own perspective the first time hearing. And this is actually a line from my book. And it's a book called, my book is called Just My 3 Cents, just like the podcast is, but the piece is called Equal Accountability. But I'm only going to read one line to you, and I want you to really listen to this, Dwayne, and tell me your thoughts. What do you expect from a group of people when you redline that group into a neighborhood in which you deindustrialize their neighborhood, which leads to poor schools, and then you over-police that same neighborhood other than to disintegrate into survival mode?
You redline and over police them.
For 40 years now, 50 years now.
Sometimes I wonder that did they even know that this could be the outcome of our communities? Like, does that make any sense?
No, I love
does that have any gravity?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
They were doing it out of hate and racism, whatever. But I wonder if they knew that this could destroy, the community. If your father's in jail, what do you think the kid's going to be?
Right.
So and then the kid comes out, he makes another kid. Now he's the father of a kid who didn't even know how to be a father of anything. What do you think that's going to create?
Right.
And then we criminalize them for nothing.
Right.
We criminalize them for having a stack of weed. We criminalize them for doing stuff that little kids do. They're criminalized now. Can't ever get jobs the rest of their lives. They're already in a situation where if they can't even speak well, they're already washed out anyway.
Correct. So I
got a cycle that just keeps burning.
Right. I got a comment from Deasia. I'm gonna read this comment again so we can both explore it. I love her comment. I'm gonna break it down, but I want you to explore it as well. Deasia says, I think the why becomes a deflection to an extent. It's really easy to dodge accountability by focusing so much on the why. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, because in anything we do in life, if we just step outside of the context of the conversation we're having now, if you don't understand the why, you can never change it. And so but the things that we're talking about, the reason the why seems like an excuse is because it sounds like I'm just saying, oh, this is what happened to us. No, that's not what I'm saying. The reason that's the first line of that equal accountability piece. And there's a lot more in that piece. I won't buy the book when it comes out. But the reason that's the first line of the piece of asking that question is because once you understand why it happened, you then can reverse engineering it not happening no longer. But if you only complain about the bad result that we hate, that a lot of us hate, that's not going to change it. You can't shame that group. You can't tell them it won't work if you don't understand how they got there. And so the how you got there is humans. Once a group of humans are put in survival mode, you're going to see all of us as humans. If we're put in survival mode, we all lose a little bit of our values when we're in survival mode. And we've all had personal experiences such as when you do that, if it's temporary, you get through the thing, you live to tell about it another day, you get back to where you back on your feet and all your values return and you operate that way for the rest of your life. So as if humans can delve into that momentarily and move on from it, what happens when you have a cycle of generation after generation red line to that area? When you ask that question, did they know? It's not so much that they knew that it would be the results 40 or 50 years later, because at the time, all it was, which is very natural for groups to do, all it was just a resource grab. We want the resources. We don't want them to have the resources, so we put them in this corner. But all groups around the world put in those same conditions have these same results. The unfortunate part is ours just lasted 40, 50, 60 years. And now you have kids, I remember this, getting picked on because I didn't have the right shoes. That happens after 40 years of, here it is, when you don't have self-esteem, you reach for value outside of yourself.
Yeah, materialistic.
Yes.
Because that's all you have. That's all. That's the only thing that can. Ooh, that's it. Ooh. That's really deep. Wow. The only thing that you can value, because you don't even love and value yourself.
Correct.
You value a materialistic name that creates your. Oh God. Wow.
You see what I'm saying? Like, we get mad at our community for being in the Jordan line, but don't forget, Nike got a $1 billion budget every year to promote to a group that feels like we just understood.
This is not really for the sake of conversation. It's really just a statement, but It's one of, you know how you say, I make you think.
Mm-hmm.
What happened that put us in a position like this? That to be a race of people that didn't fight for really who they wanted to be and sustain. So does that say we're a peaceful group of people? And so peace is who we were, allowed this? Because this goes back thousands of years.
That's a fair question. I would say in my digging in history, that hasn't been the case at all. And the reason I say that, I used to think that, but when I love history. So when I started doing a deeper dive, for example, reading The Destruction of the Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. So when I dug into that book, what I came to understand is all groups, I'll give you an example, all groups react to their circumstances as available. It wasn't that we were naturally peaceful, if you will. However, let's say when the Europeans in a sense started navigating and coming to Africa, if you will, right? So at that time, you didn't have as much geography change. So like right now, let me give you a perspective. Like everything that's desert now in Africa, which, you know, a lot of parts of Africa have large deserts, right? But geographically, years ago, that was all reversed. And so I highlight this because when you come to a people who have civilization and are not in a situation where they're fighting for resources as much, while there were a bunch of tribal differences, they wasn't operating in a bunch of, in a sense, war periods. There were parts of Africa that were, and there were parts that were not. I point this out because it's not so much that we were, quote unquote, a peaceful people. It was more or less they maybe dealt with people who didn't have to fight for resources. Part of the reason different groups traveled was to go find resources. And if you come from a warring region, a region that was warring, that's still in your blood when you go other places. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, the trauma of fight. You're always going to be in that state of that mindset. Makes sense.
Right, because if what we're saying made a difference, then the Native Americans would have had a different outcome. Because we know they fought every step of the way.
Sometimes I wonder, did they, or were they sold something? I mean, because we got Thanksgiving out of that shit. So obviously they didn't fight something. They agreed to something.
Well, now you're wrong about it. The reason that think about it. 400 or 500 years ago, they were the majority of this country. In 2021, they're 0.5% of this country.
Yeah.
So don't confuse that as if, again, I'm not. And then we also make the mistake of accepting racial constructs to talk about them as an entire group. That's what I was talking about before you came on. That the way that we accept social construct, the fact that we even look at ourselves as all the same, ends up being very ridiculous when you really understand history. When you really understand history, small tribes move the nation. That's how it works for all groups. So for example, event. Yep. So I use your example at your event that you went to of this high-end event, and obviously there's only a small percentage of blacks at it. Like you said, 1,000 people, maybe only 10 blacks. Well, keep in mind that the people that are successful in your industry and at this event, they're literally just the 10% of whites who are in the industry doing well. mediocrity is a big part of all cultures, all races, not really any different, but your own personal life experience was coming up the hard way and living and living with other people who look like you and witnessing them maybe get left behind as you advance. So you see that struggle firsthand. But there's plenty of whites who act just like what you're worried about in our community. I'm not trying to just deflect here. I'm just highlighting all groups move in tribes. There is no real social construct of race. We were taught that due to the transatlantic slave trade. Not just we as blacks, the entire world was taught that.
Yeah, no, I listen, bro. Anytime you speak, I listen. Like I get, like you educate me a lot because I'm in one world. I'm in my world, and you're looking at the whole thing. So if you get some feedback too, I'm driving because
you good.
I can't sit in downtown just chilling. I gotta move.
But nah, brother. So that's just like I said. We just do a quick hitter every Wednesday night, man. So I'm gonna give you your last thoughts, and then I'm gonna share the way I end the show is I always share a piece from my book.
You do it now because I'm driving, so it probably won't be clear. So if you can take me off, I'll just listen. All
right, sounds good, brother. All right, y'all. Again, we just do 30 minutes quick hit. So glad to get Dwayne on. Let me see DeAsia's last comment before I read the piece. DeAsia, I disagree that we know the why. So you what you call the why is what I call the results. The psychology for why the Dahl test still works just 10 years ago, we as African Americans do not understand that. We have not got into the psychology of why we act in survival mode. And don't forget that generally speaking, there are plenty of neighborhoods that are not out of survival mode. So to expect a group that's in survival mode to act different than how all humans act when in survival mode ends up becoming a discussion of the results we see. I'm not deflecting until you understand how it happened to you. And we don't typically have that discussion. I learned it through reading the book Post-Traumatic PTSD by what's her name, Joy DeGrasse. So I know when I have that discussion, it was new for me, and I don't think most of our community go that deep onto the psychology. What do I always say? You cannot act right if you do not think right. So we're talking about the results of what we do that's bad. That's the act. We does not have got into how people think. We all individually are trying to learn to think better. But if you're asking a group who grows up in regularly poor schools based on what has been done historically to expect that group to operate the same way most of us improve when we get sent to better schools or progressive schools. And if you saw my Nipsey Hussle post, he talked about that he thought completely different once he got out of survival mode. So we knowing what happened to us does not address the why. That's my thoughts on that. But I'm gonna share this last piece and I'm out of this thing. All right. So this is also from the book. Again, just my 3 cents, looking to bring it out at the beginning of the year. So hopefully y'all will be very interested in supporting what we're doing here. And this is how I end every show. Try to do 30 minutes of quick dialogue, and then we read a piece from the upcoming book, Just My 3 Cents. All right, this piece is called Black Socrates Speaks, Unapologetically Black. I love everyone, but I am unapologetically Black. When you've been systematically degraded and taught to hate yourself, a profession of love for oneself and culture should not be seen as a stance of defiance, but simply as a gesture of common sense. Someone could say, what if I, as a white person, said I love being white? My answer to that is, if you live in America or in a country where your history, culture, and traditions are celebrated, it becomes unnecessary. Trust me, Columbus is no hero of mine. Even if you, as a white person, travel to a country in which you are the minority, but you go with the knowledge of your history and culture to declare your love of being white, is not only an act of defiance, but rather a false statement of superiority. Only when you are raised under circumstances in which you are the minority without knowledge of your history and culture, regardless of color, does it become natural to seek out a definition of oneself. And any statement thereafter declaring love of self is simply for recognition. My name is Black Socrates, and I've spoken the truth as I know it. All I ask is that you think. Hope y'all have enjoyed this night's episode of Just My 3 Cents but we ultimately try to make it make sense and hopefully raise the culture. Thank y'all. I'll see y'all next Wednesday night. Please share this every Saturday morning, the Mental Dialogue Talk Show. And tomorrow night, let me highlight this too. For those who know about our mental health checkup, we're talking about how to raise We're talking about how to raise mentally healthy children tomorrow night. You have to DM me if you want to be involved in that private Zoom, because we are talking about mental health, so we don't put that out publicly. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. See y'all next Wednesday night. Hope y'all have enjoyed this. Please share it with others.